Welcome everybody to our Flama Scolares class. Today we are going to be doing basic inkle weave. Basic inkle weave, is it loom?
Basic inkle loom weaving.
Basic inkle loom weaving with our own Lady Isobel.
Hello.
So we're going to start with some basics first because if you're like me, I have done some weaving before, but I have never used an inkle loom.
All right, so the biggest thing about inkle loom is they actually did not come about until the late 1900s, or early 1900s, sorry. I get my centuries confused a little bit here and there. The reason why is when you're normally doing card weaving or inkle weaving, you are actually tethered with a backstrap loom. It's great for tension, but not great for portability. So somebody was nice enough to invent a loom that you could actually still do the same type of weaving with, but instead it's nice and portable.
According to Lady Isobel, you can buy inkle looms in many different shapes and sizes. Some that will weave 2 yards of trim and some that, like this one, will weave up to 15 yards.
So we've got some basic terms that we're going to discuss first.
Okay.
The strings that you see on here, these are known as your warp. So anybody who's weaved before, this is your warp. Later we're going to work with the weft. The weft is here on a shuttle.
Here are 2 diagrams to explain warp and weft a little bit more. Your weft fabric is going to be your fibers that are running horizontally from left to right, and your warp are your vertical fibers. Next, Lady Isobel will explain what type of heddle she is using with her inkle loom. For those not familiar, a heddle is a set of looped wires or cords on a loom through which a warp yarn is passed to control its movement and divide the threads. Heddles can be made from metal or fiber depending on your needs and preferences.
With an inkle loom, you don't have your regular heddles like you would with a rigid heddle loom or a harness loom. You actually use string. Just the same type of string that you would use to weave with. So we're actually going to do a little bit of warping on this loom right now. We're working on a simple weave out of the Inkle pattern directory. If anybody wants to see, this is kind of what patterns look like for a basic inkle loom. All right, so as you can see, it's already partially warped up. We have 7 strings left to put onto it. All right, so the first one is actually going to be heddled. So I'm going to make sure I have a heddle ready. And we're going to be changing colors in the midst of this too. All right. So we're going for the longest possible on here. Sorry, string's in the way. So we're going to go around, up, over the back peg, and then to the next peg, the next peg, the next peg. Now you notice that I have them a little bit far out right now. That'll be taken care of here in a minute. Sorry, I'm not used to working on quite such a small table.
Yeah, this is great. Though I'm sure more difficult.
Okay, so you can see there's actually a knot in the string. I try to grab my string so that the knot will fall halfway through.
Is that the heddle?
This is the heddle.
Okay.
All right, so you notice I'm grabbing it top and bottom around the string. I'm going to fold it, and I'm going to stick it around this peg right down here.
You just solved a mystery for me. Fantastic.
I just solved a mystery for you?
You did.
This is known as a double heddle method. There's also a single heddle. I have more problems with the single heddle.
Wonderful.
But I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to push all my warp threads back. Now the next one is not going to be heddled. So rather than go over the top peg, we're going to go under it. And then around, around. Okay. So now we're getting ready to change colors. Let's make sure we've got all of our strings in there good. So the way that I've found change colors is, first of all, make sure you don't have a knot, is I hold it about a couple inches out. I trim it. Now we're going to go over to our light color.
Okay.
We're only going to do one of these, okay. So I match up my ends, figure out about where I want my knot. I try to keep all my knots right on the bottom of the tension peg. Just a basic knot.
Basic knot? Okay,
Basic
to hold
knot.
the 2 together.
Yep, hold the 2 together. Now this one's going to be heddled again. So we're going to go over. Normal warp like this takes me half an hour to an hour. I didn't even count how many strings are going to be on this. I believe this is a 40. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. Color change again. Okay, we're doing one dark and then 3 lights and we're done. Now, yes, I've done things like this before. If you can see, I've actually got it on top of the peg. Since it was literally the last string, I can drop it in. Now, luckily, to save time on this class, I've already gone ahead and pre-wrapped my shuttle. If you want to take a look at that, Baroness Eleanor, you can see it's actually done in a figure 8.
Jessica explains that the figure 8 actually allows the weft threads to pull off of the shuttle much more easily and cohesively.
So say you weave, you know how wonderful that is when you get your
I do.
wefts.
But mine is so mechanic, and yours is, what I love about this is that, you know, whereas when I weave on my four shaft, it's very mechanical. I push a pedal, everything rises, and I just sling that thing through. And it's a different skill set, but to watch you do this, especially with the pickup sticks and, you know, all the little methods that I've seen you use and creating the heddles and putting those on, I think it's really fascinating.
We'll do a pickup one another time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's round 2.
Advanced weaving. I like to always push all my strings back as I'm going to keep my tension well. And the final one, you're probably wondering, how are we going to finish this off? Well, if you notice, I have a love affair with painter's tape because it doesn't leave residue. And I've got my first string taped. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my painter's tape. I'm going to make one final knot. Sometimes I get a little bit loose.
Oh, okay, so you can knot it around there and keep that tension tight.
Yep. Try to get my second knot a little further back.
Okay, and again, a basic knot?
Just a basic knot. All right, so now we're ready to weave. So, but we are going to leave a little bit of string out. So we're going to do what's called opening and closing the sheds now. So as you notice, I'm going to push down on these strings back here, and it makes this nice V shape. We're going to go ahead and put that in. Now I'm going to leave probably about 2 to 3 inches out.
Okay.
All right. Now we're going to change sheds. You ready? All we're going to do is we're going to pull up on those same strings that we pushed down on. Now we're going to push this in. We're going to push that down. So what I usually do at this point is I'll also take this one back. Remember we left that 2 to 3 inches?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll kind of tuck that in. So it firms it down.
And I'm going to get really...
All right. So you notice there's going to be a loop right there. That loop's important later.
All right, show me the loop one more time.
Little tiny loop.
Okay.
All right, here, I'll make it a little bigger.
Perfect.
All right. So again, we weave, beat. This is why people like headers. I'm going to pull that little loop a little bit tighter.
Oh, that was beautifully done, though. I see how it...
Okay, so you see how it started to pull in. Your edges are called your selvages. That little loop helps you control your selvage better. So we're just going to do a few passes so you can see how it starts to go. Open, beat. Now right now I'm right up against that tension bar, so it's going to be a little bit looser.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to leave that loop again. Open the other way. So it's beat and then pull. You're going to start to watch that right hand string come in on the selvage. Loop, open. Now the reason I start my tension so far back is as you weave, your tension is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and that bar is going to start to come up. So when you're probably 3/4 of the way done, your tension bar is going to come to about here.
Okay.
So again, we're going to leave that loop.
Due to fuzzy video, let's take a look at some still shots. Here we have Lady Isobel. She is using her shuttle to beat her fiber down into her warp threads in order to incorporate it into her pattern. She's leaving that loop and then passing the shuttle through, holding it very tightly and pulling that loop through in order to make sure the tension is very, very nice and even, and to make sure her selvages, her edges, are lining up perfectly.
So we're going to give it a few passes, and this is going to create a flower pattern. You'll see it here very shortly. The other reason some people use headers is to help get that tension under control at the beginning as well.
At the very beginning?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I usually don't have too many problems on the Inkle compared to my rigid heddle. Thing is that weaving is an addiction, as anybody who weaves will tell you.
I know.
As it St. Baroness Eleanor, didn't you start on a rigid heddle?
I did. I started on a rigid heddle, and then immediately, like 2 weeks later, had to start eBaying for a for a giant loom.
One day I will
This
have the
is
space.
fascinating. You can come use mine anytime. So that is, was that an upshed,
Um,
or is there a term for
There's,
it?
it's usually just opening a upshed or a downshed. Each weaver says it a little different. I've
Okay.
seen so many different videos that say
Sure,
it differently.
absolutely.
So I've also seen top and bottom shed.
Okay.
But you'll notice the selvages usually are a little rough at first, but this is a flower pattern. If you actually start to look in, you're going to see little flowers forming. Most people usually like to, their weft, they want it to match their selvage threads on the edge. You can add some contrast by, I could be using like a white on here. Give it just a little something different on the edge.
And that's beautiful. You've already accomplished like 1.5 inches. So now that we've seen the basics, let's talk patterns.
So your basic pattern right here, this book is wonderful because it shows you what your weave is actually going to look like. It shows you a little bit of what your warp and weft is going to look like. They give you recommendations for the threads to use. But you can see here in very tiny print the H and the U.
Yep.
Okay, H is for heddles, U is for unheddled.
Okay.
All right. So you're also going to notice there's a ×2 in here. So the way you read this, thread 1, heddled, light green, thread 2, unheddled, light green, etc., etc. And you see the color change in there. And then you go into your pattern, the dark green, light green. But when you get to the end, you repeat. And that one repeats twice, and then you go down to the bottom. Now you see some of the patterns over on this other page, once they get a little bit more complex, is you repeat this whole section twice, but there's repeats within it. So it's that, this section twice, this section twice, then repeat it again, and then again towards the end.
Very nice.
Yep.
And so does it give you samples? So it kind of looks like where threads could contrast and maybe using a
Yes.
darker thread in a certain spot to make that pattern happen?
Correct.
All right.
This is your basic section. I mean, this book is wonderful for anyone who wants to learn how to do some weaving. They have a section on how to design patterns.
Oh, wonderful.
They have repetitive. I'll just kind of flip through some of this. You can actually do, they talk about what causes twists in patterns.
And what's a twist?
You can actually make tubular patterns.
Oh.
Hold on, I'll pull that up just so you can see. There's the starting and finishing, as I said. They talk about all kinds of things in here. Where's my tubulars? I don't like doing the tubulars so much. I've tried. This is what a tubular inkle actually looks like.
Let me pull back and get that in real quick. Oh, wow. So that, I mean, that's straight up tubular.
Yep.
Very cool.
And it talks about the twist that will happen with your threads when you're doing tubulars. And you actually purposely try to get them to twist.
That's really neat. So let me ask you this. What is your favorite thing about the Inkle loom and Inkle weaving?
I think that I can be a little bit more mindless, especially if I'm doing just a simple weave. I can sit there and work on something, and this one I can usually pull about 85 to 90 inches in just a couple days.
That's fantastic.
Just watching TV.
And even though it's something that you can do, just your memory going, the arms knowing what they're doing, it turns into something that's really incredible.
Oh yeah. Even pickup patterns, once you get the pattern really down, you don't have to look at it so much and you can start to do the same thing. Biggest thing is having to pay attention to your pattern.
Here you will see the progress of the very trim that Lady Isobel started for this class. It's a beautiful fabric with a beautiful weave, and I am so glad that she decided to share with us. Here are a few other trims that she has created on her Inkle loom. I hope that this class has inspired you to learn something new and that you will take time out of your day to go forth and create.